Hi, Steve here. Thank you for joining me on the Panoramic Travels YouTube channel. This is a video I alluded to in my last video, the Panoramic RV episode 13 Heading Out West video. We met a couple from Connecticut at the Starr Brothers Harvest Host while we were in Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta. They gave us a tour of their 1993 Airstream camper van, which included a corkboard with pins from places that they had visited. That inspired me to make my own board, and here it is. Okay, let's get started. The first step is to find a board to mount the pins. We went to Joann's Fabrics, and first we looked at some cork board or canvas panels. Then we found this wood panel, which we thought would hold the pins much more firmly. The second step was to create a grid pattern that would accommodate various size pins. I came up with columns that were 33 millimeters apart and rows that were 42 millimeters apart, allowing me to place 10 pins across and 6 down for a total of 60 pins per board. The next step is to place the pins on the grid in the order that we want to have them on the board, and then keeping them in that same order, flipping them over onto the back side. Step 4 consists of marking the center line and then marking the pin location and measuring the distance or offset between the center line and the pin location. For step 5, you measure the offset distance for each pin on the paper. Next, you tape the paper to the board. For step 7, you push the pins through the paper and board into the offset point for each pin. I really thought I was going to have to use a small drill bit for this step, but I was able to push the pins through the board. You might notice 2 missing spaces. Those are for a couple of pins that I have on order, one for the Seattle Space Needle and one for Watkins Glen State Park. For the next step, while the paper is still taped to the board, I marked each of the other center point locations for future pins. Step 9 consisted of removing the pins from the board and the paper. For step 10, I started inserting the pins into the wooden board. Each pin has a tab on it, and the tab makes a little indentation on the wood, which I used a pin to open that tab up a little more. I'll demonstrate that towards the end of this video. For step 11, I attached the locking backs, which I looked up and found out that they're called clutches, and I did use super glue on them so that they are on there permanently. I also placed 4 strips of Velcro around the frame. Step 12 is placing the board on the back of the galley wall high enough so that I can put a second board below it. I just got the Space Needle pin so I can demonstrate the steps in the video. First, I removed the clutches. Then I measured and marked the center line. I marked where the 2 pins are located, and then I measured the offsets from the center line to the 2 pins. I marked the 2 offsets from the center line on the board, and then I pushed the 2 pins through the board. I removed the pin so I could see where the tab marks were. I opened up those tab marks a little bit and then reinstalled the pin. Finally, I turned the board over, applied super glue to the 2 pins, and attached the clutches. So here's the final product as it exists so far. I still need to get the Watkins Glen State Park pin, and then I'll still have room for 25 more pins on this board.